some noise for
Orange Juice in a Blunt.
Whoreson, the story of a ghetto pimp. My return to the free world was uneventful. No one really cared whether I came home or not. Big Mama was dead, and I didn't have anything in common with Tony since he plucked off my woman. In fact, I made it a point to stay out of their way. I didn't know how I would react if I ran up on Boots, so I kept my distance. The streets hadn't changed that much. There was a new group of young pimps hanging around on the corners, but besides that, it seemed as if the clock had stood still. My first stop had been at the bank where the lawyer had deposited my money. I withdrew it and made a beeline for the nearest Cadillac dealer. I put $4,000 down on the new Caddy, with the promise to bring the other $2,800 on the date of delivery. Since I didn't have any credit, I had to pay cash, but it didn't make any difference. When I left prison, I'd had close to $3,000 in my account, and with the $5,000 Big Mama left me, I still had enough to get a few rags to wear. Tony had my jewelry, and I was on my way to get my diamonds from him without any static. I spoke to the car dealer. "How about letting me use one of those old junks till my car's delivered?" He shook his head. "I don't think I could do that. If you had an accident or something, we'd be in one hell of a fix here." I pulled out my bankroll and peeled off a $50 bill. "Do you think that will cover your problem until my car's delivered?" He pocketed the bill and called one of the colored men working on the lot and had him put a dealer's plate on one of the older cars. I drove off the lot and headed downtown. After getting my license straightened out, I stopped at a clothing store and bought a few outfits. Dusk was just falling when I turned onto Hastings. Tony had moved all of his girls down to the lower end of the street because of his misunderstanding with Big Mama, and after her death, he was too settled where he was to move back to the neighborhood we had been raised in. Since I didn't know where he lived, I pulled up in front of 6 girls working in a doorway to inquire as to his whereabouts. 5 of them rushed up to the car. They all wore short skirts and their faces were heavily painted. "Hi, honey," the leader of the group yelled. "Which one of us do you want to see?" The leader was a large woman, with an abundance of everything. You could look at her and see that she must have been cute before she allowed herself to gain so much weight. Now that she was going to fat, it was hard to discover anything attractive about her. But when she smiled, showing the tip of her tongue at the corner of her mouth, there was the promise of sweet sensuality and exorbitant delight. There hadn't been the slightest thought in my mind of playing stuff, but since she had hit on me, I decided to teach her a lesson. "Yeah, baby, why don't you sit down for a minute? Maybe you and me can reach some kind of agreement." She tossed a wicked look over her shoulder at her friends, as though to tell them she had just pulled off a grand coup. Her attitude was one of authority. You could tell she was under the impression that she was the leader of the hen house. I drove around the corner and parked. "What's your name, honey?" I asked softly. "Most of my dates just call me Ruby, sweetie." Appearances could really be deceiving. This bitch actually thought I was a mark. "I want to talk to you for a few moments, Ruby," I said, while pulling my huge bankroll out. I scanned through the money for a second, then found a $10 bill and put it in her lap. Her eyes had got big as a dinner plate at the sight of my bankroll. "Sure, sweetie, as long as you got the price, I got the time," she capped, trying to control the greed in her voice. Assuming an air of embarrassment, I put the little game into action. Ruby, I don't know how to ask you this, but, I, want you to teach me how to pimp. That really caught the bitch unprepared. She stared at me, with her eyes wide and her mouth flopping like a caught fish. I continued before she had time to speak. What I mean is, I'll pay you to show me how to dress like a pimp, act like one, and really carry myself like one. I rushed on. You ain't got to worry about getting paid, 'cause my daddy died and left me $25,000. I'm gonna buy me a Cadillac as soon as I get the rest of the money. I pulled the bankroll back out. As you can see, I got $5,000 of it now. I flashed 6 $100 bills at her. Beyond a doubt, the bitch was hooked. She just stared at me, dumbfounded. You don't think you'll have any difficulty teaching me what I want to know, do you, Ruby? She shook her head. Ain't no trouble in teaching you, but, you ain't bullshitting about this, are you? This ain't some kind of joke you call yourself having on me, is it? Is that money in your lap a joke? I asked. Again, she shook her head. You mean you don't want to go to no hotel or nothing like that? Absolutely not, young lady. Pimps don't go to bed with a woman the first time they meet her, do they? For a minute, I began to think I was laying on a little too thick. She stared at me as though I was losing my goddamn mind. That's right, honey. You don't want to go to bed with me if you want to be a pimp. They don't hop in and out of bed with every woman they meet the way a square would do. It hadn't taken her long to catch on to the way the trend was going. She rumbled around in a pocketbook and came up with a pencil, a small notebook. She'd come to the conclusion that I was some kind of nut and decided to play on me for the $10 bill I'd given her. I didn't want her to give me the wrong number, so I aroused her greed. Pulling off a $5 bill, I put it in her lap. You make sure I can get in touch with you now, Ruby, 'cause I want you to help me pick out my Cadillac and clothes, plus I'm going to pay you real well when I get the rest of my money, sometime this month. The thought of playing me out of that money had become so exciting to her she could hardly breathe. When she tried to speak, her words came out in blurts. Her features lacked any compassion. To her, I was the once-in-a-lifetime trick. I stared at her in amusement. This big, out-of-shape, cow-like bitch really believed she would end up beating me out of some money. After I took the address she had written out, she staggered away from the car as though she was drunk. At no time during our conversation had she even asked for my name. I pulled away from the curb, full of confidence. This was one bitch that was getting ready to get faked completely out of her whore boots. Now my immediate problem was to find Tony, so I could get my diamonds. I drove slowly back up Hastings, examining various faces in the late-model cars I passed. The neighborhood hadn't changed much, unless it was even more decrepit than before I left. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel as if I was coming home. I could look at the sores of poverty and truly understand the meaning of slum life. The filthy streets, the wine-heads sitting in doorways, the horrible shacks some unfortunate souls called home. I realized that there had to be something better in life for me. On the opposite corner, I saw a blood-red Cadillac parked at the curb. I pulled over and found a parking place. I'd got the wire in prison that Tony owned a red Caddy, and I didn't think there were that many red Cadillacs on this side of town. I stopped in 2 restaurants first, without any luck, then crossed the street and entered Ed's bar. Just about the first thing I saw was Tony, sitting at a table with 2 white girls. He saw me and waved a hand in my direction. I walked slowly over to his table. "Whoreson, I heard you was out, baby." How come you didn't look me up so I could give you a coming home party?" The people in the bar had become silent as students in a deaf and dumb school. I stared around at some of the familiar faces. Whores sat on bar stools, staring at us curiously, while behind the bar, the white owner watched us closely for